I want to welcome you, Allan Molnar, one of my great longtime friends. We'll talk about the theme of the podcast is shaping your journey. Before you talk about that, give us a little bit of history. You know, where you're from and what you've done. And
Well, I grew up on a farm just outside of Yorkton, Saskatchewan. And at the age of 5, I took my first organ lesson. At the age of 9, I agreed with my parents that I would not opt for minor hockey, but instead would continue music lessons. And that was my first live TV appearance as a kid. At 12, played in my first band. At 13, played my first professional gig with a country and western band. Went to college, became certified as a music teacher. In 1981, I became a music teacher in Saskatoon, 2 years there, and then moved off to Toronto, where I taught for 20 years with the Catholic School Board and played all kinds of gigs and all kinds of fun things, and met interesting people, and kept crossing paths with some of my friends in Montreal. And then 2003 moved to New York, and here I am still surviving it all.
yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned my friends in Montreal, but I remember did I see you? I was with Repercussion in Saskatoon or Regina that we had that big PAS day.
It was, I don't think you actually performed in Saskatoon. You were performing in the smaller centers on that tour. And I heard the group at least once, and one of them was in Regina for the PAS Day of Percussion that was being held there. And we definitely connected back then.
I remember it was Les DeMerle who was there, and we had a great big jam session afterwards. It was great. I mean, I still remember that vividly. And I remember when we were doing that tour, I insisted. I said, we have to go into the schools, we have to educate, we have to expose all those people who would never have an opportunity, because I don't know if we're going to do this twice. But so it was important for us to get to as many people as possible, and we did. We played the smallest places and the biggest places. Anyway, anything that we can get our hands on or that would let us in. Just kidding, but
it was extraordinary.
But you were at that concert, right?
Yes, I was.
And then we crossed paths. When did we cross paths after that?
Well, I came out, although we never met, but I came out and heard Repercussion in Toronto. I think, soon after I moved, when you opened for the Buddy Rich Big Band, I was there. I was there at Roy Thompson Hall when you did the big extravaganza, along with Nexus, and Nexus was in that too, I think.
Yes.
I remember. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
That was
Abraham
Adzinya, the African drummer from Ghana.
That was an amazing performance. I didn't hear you at Expo in Vancouver. I think you were there, and I think I was there that year as well, but I didn't catch you there. But caught you in Toronto. But I think the next time we actually, had conversation was when I was getting ready to move to New York, and I was driving back. I was in New York just kind of checking things out, and I stopped by COSA. And
in Vermont, you mean?
That's correct.
At the camp
yes.
in Vermont. Okay.
Yeah. And, I figured, Aldo might have, 5 minutes, because I figured you'd be pretty busy. I think we talked for hours. And it was a really great visit and a great hang. And it was the Friday night performance of the participants.
Right.
And so I really caught COSA at its best, which of course was always spectacular. And I guess about a year later, I got the email, inviting me to come, and my life changed.
It changed. You mean you grew? No, that was fun. I mean, as we were trying to get everybody, this was a whole total experience, total percussion experience. But, we wanted to expose everyone to everything that we thought was important, from the people who were making the difference, from the instigators of everything, and people who with great ideas. I would invite everybody who kind of fit the picture as a total experience. From the music point of view, from the performance, from the educational, and also from the business point of view, just to get a much bigger picture and be totally inspired, from this. So, I mean, you fit the picture because you're a great mallet player, but also as an educator, and also you've been traveling. For me, this thing of shaping your journey is also about displacing yourself, and you go where you need to go, investing time, energy, and money, and getting out of your comfort zone, and being put on the spot. And there you do better things. You become a better version of yourself. You're forced to, and you're not. You're not in your comfort zone where you say, "Oh, this is good enough." Our mind plays tricks on us. The moment you are out of this zone, it actually allows you to be that person you could be, and you're forced into it because you can do it, right? And it really makes a difference. And what was that for you?
Yeah, well put. Well put. And the way I look at it is, if I'm contemplating a change of some sort and I'm absolutely terrified, then I'm on the right path.
Yeah. No, usually that does it. And all the people we meet, by doing that, you meet other people who then introduce you to other people, and then you're on the spot, right? I mean, that's been my experience. All of a sudden, you look up and here you are with people who are your mentors, and you perform. You come up to base, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, how did that work for you? You took yourself from Toronto and moved to New York, and there you are in New York, and you've been in New York for years now at the college teaching there.
Yeah, and I think because of COSA, because of the opportunities that were given to me by you and everyone who puts COSA together and all those good things, I met Arnie Lang. And Arnie became a friend, a mentor, one of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. And he opened doors for me in New York that I could never have opened myself. But, he had come, at COSA that very first year. He came and sat in on my classes, and he asked questions, and we talked. And, then a couple of years later, I have the great privilege of being able to work with him, first at Brooklyn College when I was there as a sub for a couple of semesters, and then at Lehman College. And, we have many great moments in our lives, and I could probably talk for hours about that. But if I had to, identify one, I would say it was knowing Arnie.
And Arnie was like that. I mean, he's passed, unfortunately, recently, but he was one, he was 84 years old, and he was always an incredible energy since I knew him also, I remember actually going to he put on a PAS day at Brooklyn College years ago, and I attended that, and that's where I met Gordon Gottlieb. He was playing with French Toast, Dave Weckl on drums.
Right.
Who's the piano player? Incredible piano player. And it just escapes me. But incredible band, and I got to meet Gordon, and it's these things, meeting all of these great people through all of these events, and Arnie was very much like that. He was introducing people all the time, and he fit right into the COSA concept brilliantly. And he would come on our faculty for years, in and out. Different years, we would invite different people because we wanted to have the participants who came have access to all of these people. Everybody from George Gaber, I'm talking the classical world, George Gaber to John Beck, himself. Many, many, many different people, younger and people, especially the people who we all looked up to as kids. It was nice to have an environment where we could not only meet them, but hang with them, learn from them, play, perform, and be critiqued by them, and have this interaction. And then between us all, we learned a lot, and we continued to. And Arnie was making snare drums until the last day.
Yeah,
He was,
he was. Yeah.
and although he was a classical percussionist, he was so open to all the jazz and all the world music, and he understood. He really got it where I was coming from. I don't see the lines. The lines are blurred for me. I tell everyone there are 7 notes, and then the rest are different languages coming from the cultures. And the more languages you speak, the better. Musically speaking. Besides the other languages, and their relationship to each other really means a lot. And the musicians and certainly percussionists are really known for that. One day we'll be playing Brazilian, and next day classical. I can hear a Varese piece and be totally at home playing a jazz thing or a Cuban thing or a funk thing. Or I don't really see the difference. And the challenge is to make it, of course, contextual and sound real. And in order to sound real, you have to study it. You have to spend some time with that. You've done that also in your path.
Yeah.
Who are some of the people that you performed with and recorded with in the past?
Well, notably when I was still in Toronto, I had the opportunity to do some work on Nelly Furtado's first album. And, that was an interesting story and interesting how these things come about, because she was unknown at that time. She had a good record deal, and she was, I think, maybe 20. And she had done some tracking with one of the percussionists I was working with in a Latin band that I played vibes in, and we gigged all over the city. And we had a Saturday morning gig in the area of town that Nelly lived in at that time, and the percussionist said, "Oh, we got this gig. Come on out and come and listen." And so she was there, and she liked the vibes, and asked for my card. And several weeks later, I got a call from Gerald Eaton, Jarvis Church, who was producing the first couple of albums that she did, actually. And I had the opportunity to work with her and the rest of the production team. So that was really an unexpected blessing, and I really enjoyed having that opportunity. In New York, I see my position is I'm not trying to get in anyone's band, okay? But I look for opportunities to connect with as many really brilliant people as possible. And, one notable is Mike Manieri, and I've gotten to perform with him, but again, not in his band. Now, my middle name is Steven, but he has 2 Steves who he would call on drums way before ever calling me.
Steve Gadd, yes, and Steve Jordan. And Steve Smith, yes.
Yeah. And but where I sit in this is, he came into the Johnny Pacheco Latin Music and Jazz Festival at Lehman College, a festival that I founded some years back, and he served as a guest clinician and a guest artist with my student jazz ensemble. And, we kind of snuck in a couple of faculty things. You were involved in much of that as well. And I got to play with one of the greatest vibraphone players of all time. And so, and I still stay in touch. He's very friendly and great to speak to, and such a brilliant mind. And from my point of view, how could it possibly be better, And, Lou Marini, I've had an opportunity to work with him. More recently, I've had opportunity to do some work with Graham Nash. And, and again, it's just you you collect these experiences. And for me, like I said, I'm not trying to get in anyone's band. I just want to see how these people think, and and figure out how to apply their brilliant approach to living their lives, designing their lives, and do my best to apply that to my own.
Yeah. And it's interesting, speaking of Mike Minieri, I had no idea. I mean, I had forgotten, I should say, because I do remember hearing him playing with Buddy Rich in a small group ensemble situation. And then Mike told me when he came to COSA that he was responsible for a lot of the orchestrations that they were doing in New York. A lot of the orchestral things for the rock bands, and he was in that whole scene at the time, which is really amazing. I mean, he's been around a long time and very brilliant in many capacities. I mean, besides the jingles, he was doing a lot of those big records that we hear, and the lush orchestrations with the orchestra, and yeah, I mean,
so as a drum set player who plays vibraphone, when I had that opportunity to play with Mike, I had the best seat in the house.
Yep.
And likewise, again, at COSA, now I've been a long-time fan of Weather Report, and I've had opportunity to play with Nduka Chancellor, Chester Thompson, and Alex Acuna. And three Weather Report drummers, I got to play with them. Now, as a vibraphone player, I had the best seat in the house there. So again, these are one-off experiences, but again, they are memorable. That I'll never forget, and so it's that's really one of the truly exciting things in this profession, is just to be able to breathe the same air that these amazing people breathe, and take away all the great things that they are there to show us.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. When you're speaking of our own trajectories, as we're on our paths, we start getting involved in these kinds of things. I mean, obviously at COSA, we purposely did that, people playing together, and these combinations of musicians who would never have happened otherwise. And I remember it was Jimmy Cobb when he was there. And he was a little nervous about how do I explain this. So I said, no, I'll ask you questions, and I'll come to your class, and I'll ask you some questions just to get you going as to what I think is going on in their minds. Because obviously, with Miles Davis, what he did with kind of blew people away. And it was so simple. I mean, it's not really simple. But what he did on that record, we're still trying to do. It's like saying Ringo Starr was simple. Well, not really simple. It was well thought out, and it's exactly the thing that it took to make that. And having the opportunity to listen and displacing yourself. This is what it's all about. I mean, I'm telling people always, displace yourself, help somebody out. Open that door for the people, help people be in the right place, or invite them. If they break their neck, they break their neck, but at least they get the opportunity to get outside of themselves, invest in themselves, and be in a situation where it could be a lot of fun, and it usually is. And I remember with Jimmy Cobb, it really struck me. I was speaking to someone on stage while he was preparing his drums for the sound check. And in the back, as I'm speaking, I am hearing sound of drums that I didn't recognize at the camp that week. You know what I'm saying? This is like the Blue Note sound that I'm hearing in my mind, and I thought I was hallucinating orally, And it was funny because I turn around and there's Jimmy Cobb, testing something, and it's whatever he was playing, it sounded like Jimmy Cobb. Mm-hmm. It was unbelievable, unbelievable. I want to ask you about your whole involvement. I know we go way back on this, the whole long-distance learning. Of course, now today we're doing all of this incredible stuff online, and it's just magnificent. But many, many years ago, you had this vision of distance learning was online, and I kind of was in and out of your projects, and we worked a lot together. Talk to us about that. I mean, that's interesting. I think it's about 18 years now, if I remember correctly.
That's about right. Well, before I go into that, you reminded me of one very important part of my earlier stated resume that I forgot to mention. So a year before that first organ lesson at the age of 5, I was watching the Ed Sullivan Show on a Sunday evening with my family, and I remember like it was yesterday watching the Beatles. And my mother told me, some decades later, I guess, that I was indeed one of those kids who went into the kitchen, pulled out pots and pans and a couple of wooden spoons, and bashed away. So that of course was a pretty important part of it.
It's a great story, though.
It's interesting how the music finds us. So anyway, the distance learning thing. Yeah, that was such an interesting exploration. I was open to something. I was new to New York, and my good friend Stuart Smith, who collaborated with me on so many of those projects, and I were looking for something to do. We weren't sure, and then Apple came out with iChat and their eyesight camera, and okay, this is what we need to do. And it was an interesting, very practical reason why I embraced that. Now, I worked for a couple of consecutive spring semesters at Brooklyn College as a sub for a teacher who was taking some sort of a sabbatical, and I was tasked with going out and observing student teachings, doing teachers in schools, and doing the coursework, and they had not taken brass methods at that point. And so, I've got band director brass chops. I mean, not real good, but I know what to do with the instruments. But it's not like having a real brass person. Stuart, of course, is a brass specialist, and we connected on the whole distance thing. And I video conferenced him into Brooklyn College, and then we team taught a session, and that started the whole thing going. It, of course, worked very well. And we completely defeated the latency issue by deploying some smoke and mirrors. And what we did when we were performing was to have a unidirectional signal flow. So when you did so many of those performances with us. From Montreal, with or without a track. I mean, you were playing your very interesting drum kit on a lot of those, and so just the visual itself on the big screen behind me, wherever I was very cool. And so you would start playing on my cue. We would interact a little bit, and that's not a big deal. I think the first one we did together was when I was in Stockholm presenting at the Percussive Art Society Day of Percussion there. And I set up a performance, and so I had a vibraphone in front of the audience, and I had guests lined up. I think there were 3. There was the Kansas State University Latin Jazz Ensemble led by Dr. Kurt Gartner. There was my a good friend from my college days, Bob Meunier, who we played a mallet duet. Actually, he played marimba. I played vibes, and he was in his office at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. And then, of course, you were in Montreal. So I had musicians waiting all over for me. And we did the concert, and it worked out really, really well. And, again, being a unidirectional signal, we weren't playing in real time together. You weren't hearing me. We just worked out the arrangement. And when your signal got to me, I played along in front of the audience, and everyone said, "Hey, wow, this is interesting." And so we went on the road. I mean, and the interesting part is I never traveled as much in my life as when I was doing the distance learning thing. I mean, Hong Kong and Australia and Calabria and Norway and Stockholm and all over the U.S. and Canada. So it was very, very interesting. I mean, it continues to this day. I mean, we're just kind of getting started on a lot of things because I mean, the pandemic has been, a horrible situation for, all the obvious reasons, but the, the advancement of technology, I think, was really fueled by the necessity of being able to lead an interesting and sort of normal life. And the options that are about to come to us in a big way, for playing in real time together, where we're hearing each other and doing all that. I've already bought into it, and it's a matter of time for it to start. And I've measured the distance. Montreal's not that far away. We're going to be able to do that.
No, and I remember when, doing these things with you, it was, I remember the one I was in Australia, and you were in New York. And that one, people were flipped because not only the distance, but the time difference. But it was really interesting. At the time, we were playing to each other. One was a company, one was, and we would switch that back and forth. So that was an interesting thing. But what you're mentioning now is that now we'll be playing live, like no latency. This is I see it. I know what you're talking about, and it's the next thing, and it's right at this doorstep, and it's going to be fun, because I don't think the present situation is going to get changed all that much. But even if it does, the where we're going with this, it just adds a whole other dimension, right? We can perform. We're already doing records at a distance, but we can perform live, totally live, and have no latency and be right there. We can also be in the same room. We can be in the same studio or same concert stage as we were in the past. So we have that extra option now, which is amazing. Look what we're doing now. Just speaking like this live, and it's incredibly interactive, and we don't have to leave the house or the studio. Yeah. What are some of the things that some people who don't venture so much? What are the things that in your opinion scare them or scare them not to go into that area as a performer, but also as an educator? What are your thoughts on that?
You mean into the playing together in real time over the internet, that type of thing?
That, but also people not going into territories. I'm using the reverse now. What makes us? You and I have always pushed ourselves, gone to those places. So we're kind of some of the examples of people who push themselves and go somewhere. But there are people who are always afraid to do that. And what stops them from where you're standing?
Yeah, that's always a good question, because it's so exhilarating to step on the ledge and take risks and go after things. But I think people sometimes get very comfortable, overly comfortable, and I've had so many people say, "What, you're going to do that? I'll give it up," and I'm not really one to be affected by that. It kind of makes me think, oh yeah. and so I don't know, maybe it's some form of peer pressure or perceived peer pressure. I don't, it's really hard to say. I just have fun taking the risks and finding the people who aren't scared of that. And it does take a lot of courage. I moved from Saskatoon to Toronto with $1,000 in the bank and no job, and got a job. And I moved. I had a little more money because we sold our house, but I ran out of money before I got my gig at Lehman. And but unbeknownst to me, there was a bunch of royalties that had accumulated from working with Nelly, and that came to me at literally about 2 days before I ran out of money, which was about 6 months before I got my foot in the door at Lehman, and I was able to sustain myself on that. And I'll tell you, I was nervous, but it all worked out. And So I think about those types of moments, and it can be scary. And I suppose fear of the unknown maybe is really what
Yeah.
keeps people from exploring things that could be very exciting for them.
No, for sure. And I'm thinking what's along this theme that I'm
Oh,
exploring.
I just
Go
I
ahead.
just lost your audio for a moment. Could you
Oh,
repeat, please?
I'm just thinking in along the lines of the podcast, what we're doing here,
Uh-huh.
and what I'm trying to project as my own philosophy is it's important to help people get where they're going or open doors, and it's nice to have familiar faces and people who will actually take the time to show you, because the better off somebody else is, the better off you become, and the collective. So in making these kinds of decisions, and that's why I think it's really important to be a good person and be helpful. I
Yeah.
won't use the word useful, but helpful, because we should be. I mean, I think that should be an innate responsibility, that once we achieve something, you should become more useful than you even were or thought you could be.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
so when someone is taking a big risk, moving to New York it is a big risk. For all of us, wherever we go, we're taking some kind of a risk. But if someone is there who shows the way, who says something, who says, here's the number, call this guy, or facilitates a specific situation, sometimes it's that little bridge that makes all the difference. And you just have to wait, right? And
Yeah.
and sometimes you're close to the thing, and it's only a matter of days. So you have to have the patience and the belief that if you really want to do something, it'll happen, because you'll work for it, and people around will be kind enough and good enough and have the vision to say, I should give this person a hand, and it should be a natural thing, right? Would you agree with that?
Well, I do, and you provided that to me. Arnie Lang provided that helping hand to me, and all the great musicians I got to hang out with and connect with via COSA, all served that role for me. I mean, it was very natural for them. For me, it was like I don't know, an incredible blessing, a gold mine. Amazing stuff.
Yeah, no, it's always a lot of fun. I remember when we do these weekends in New York, COSA New York weekends, and we did them with Jonathan Haas at the NYU, with you at Lehman, and people come together and connect. So you are also given an opportunity to meet other people, to share your knowledge, and kind of be in the same room. Like in Hollywood, they would go to the cocktail, and that's great, or the golf course. But for us, it's creating these situations where that'll naturally happen, because as musicians, we're always intrigued by, and what's that about? And what's this? Oh, you should check this out. So it's kind of like putting one foot in front of the other, and the other one making sure there's nothing in the way, or being in a comfortable room, or with people who make you feel comfortable, that kind of inspire you on and say, yeah, do it. As long as nobody gets hurt, you're
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
As long as we do the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And then we can live to learn to talk about it.
Well, that one of those early influences and inspirations was Ringo, and I didn't do too much damage to the pots and pans, but I played them.
Yes. I had that conversation with Greg Bisonet, and I mean, many other people. It was, we all had that same kind of experience that Sunday night. Like it just changed everything. The next
Well,
day
it's kind of.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say that I actually had that same conversation with Greg at COSA. We were standing together in the line, waiting for dinner, I guess. And so we just started talking, and he and I think, are pretty much exactly the same age. And and he had an off week from touring with Ringo, And so I told him the story that that I just shared with you, and he just smiled and said, "Yeah, same thing for him." My only response was, I said, "Well, it worked out a lot better for you than it did for me."
That's funny. I mean, it's really interesting because I mean, I have to thank Greg because he cleared up something for me for a long time because I was writing out all Ringo's parts and one was always a big confusion for me, and it come together. That famous triplet thing that dun dun dun. Anyway, and then he looked at me. He says, "I made the same mistake. It doesn't go down; it goes up. Starts from the floor tom to go to the tom tom." And I said, "Oh, it's been driving me crazy. I can't figure it out because it sounds like," he says, "yeah, that's the bass that's crossing. The pitches are crossing." But when I played it with Ringo said, "That's not what I did." He says, "This is what I did." So he cleared him up, and Greg cleared me up for sure. So it's what a great feeling knowing what it should be, and you can
Yeah.
only know that when you're out there and you meet such people and you become friends and they'll open up and interesting. It's an interesting voyage, this whole thing, right?
Hmm.
What are your projects coming up in New York?
Well, I'm in the process right now of producing an hour-long TV show every week for Bronx Net Television, and this is the current answer to the pandemic for the Johnny Pacheco Latin Music and Jazz Festival. We received, actually for the third year in a row, two of the years being COVID years, a nice, generous grant from the Louis Armstrong Educational Foundation for the festival. So I've been hiring clinicians to go into the schools, mostly, well, last year was completely remote, and it was mostly remote this year, but there were a few schools that opted to bring some people in person, which I was very happy to facilitate, as long as all the permissions were in place, and they were. And so I'm taking now selected events and turning them into a television show. Last week was the first in the series, and I had the student jazz ensemble at Lehman. It kind of put together a hybrid virtual ensemble and real in-person ensemble, and that was a lot of work. And had some of our feeder schools involved, and a lot of good things. So that was last week. This week, actually, kind of things have an interesting way of reappearing. I've always wanted to bring some vocal jazz to the Pacheco Festival and the Celia Cruz Bronx High School of Music, which has I think one of the best music programs in the city. Really outstanding teachers. And just a few years ago, they started a vocal jazz ensemble. And this year, I brought in a really outstanding clinician named Andrew Kessler, who's doing incredible work with some top-end people down in Los Angeles. And in fact, this is going to be my Christmas Eve show. It airs this Friday night, and which is Christmas Eve. And Andrew works with this as part of this vocal jazz ensemble called Accent, and they're just phenomenal. Andrew himself is a talented multi-instrumentalist, arranger, singer, you name it, he does it. And interestingly enough, he's from Saskatoon.
Wow.
And yeah, and he, I mean, I left Saskatoon, I think about 10 years before he was born, and so I'd never met him. I met him by chance last year, and he did a workshop for us on making a living in the music industry, and it was spectacular. And so I brought him into, all via Zoom, of course, and brought him to do workshops with the Celia Cruz Vocal Jazz Ensemble, and they already knew about him, and they loved him. He did a spectacular job, but he he gave me permission to broadcast two pieces of music that are actually up on YouTube now. One is with the it's Holly Jolly Christmas, his arrangement of it for the vocal ensemble plus a rhythm section. It's really great. And the other one is very, very interesting too. It's Let It Snow. So it's a vocal ensemble with a big band. Of course, it's the Gordon Goodwin Big Band.
Wow.
And special guest Arturo Sandoval.
Oof.
So, these are the musicians that Andrew is working with in Los Angeles. Just a brilliant, brilliant musician who's, he's just getting started and he's going to do amazing things.
Nice. Isn't Joni Mitchell from around Saskatoon?
Well, she was actually born, I believe, in Alberta.
Oh, in Alberta.
But the family moved to Saskatoon when she was pretty young, and she, as I understand, claims Saskatoon as her home, And I think just a few years ago, they named a street for her
Nice,
there, and
nice.
so yeah, we of Saskatchewan like to claim her, and Buffy St. Marie as well.
Right.
And yeah, some good musicians came out
Nice.
of it.
Now it's great to see some of these people. It doesn't really matter where you're from. I mean, music is, I was talking to a friend the other day who said, the drum, not just the drum, the music community, it's almost its own country with no borders. I love
Interesting.
that image.
Yeah, I like that.
It's its own country. It's fantastic. Anyway, yeah, it's all about the journey and what we do with it. Right, we're in total charge. I want to thank
bet.
you, Allan, for joining me. And as I always say, to be continued.
To be continued. Thank you so much, Aldo. This is really a pleasure to have a good hang and visit with you and share all these wonderful ideas with each other. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Allan.